When the smoke from my BBQ drew the wrath of the neighborhood's self-appointed enforcer, I discovered that standing up for community spirit might ignite more than just the grill. It was one of those perfect Saturdays when even the grill seemed to hum a happy tune. The sun beamed down with the kind of warmth that invited neighbors to leave their homes and forge connections over charcoal and condiments. As I flipped my first batch of burgers, the smoke curling into the sky like a whimsical ribbon, my mind was filled with thoughts of juicy meat and laughter. Then, like a thundercloud banking over my paradise, I caught a glimpse of Karen Whitmore. Standing with her arms crossed, she resembled a hawk who had spotted its prey, her silver hair gleaming in the light, while her oversized sunglasses gave her an air of dramatic mystery. Just like that, my sunny BBQ became an impending comedy of errors, and I braced myself for the absurd showdown ahead. With every sizzle from the grill, I could feel Karen's glare penetrating deeper, as if she were trying to fry my burgers with sheer willpower alone. I imagined she was mentally ticking off her list of violations. The grill is too close to the hedges. What's that unsanctioned red tablecloth? Are those burgers even organic? I was suddenly hyper-aware of the neighborhood's unspoken rulebook, a tome I had no intention of reading. Calling to my friend Mike, who was trying to set up a Bluetooth speaker on my porch, I threw him a panicked glance. If she hovers any closer, I might end up with a 10-page memo instead of a plate of ribs. He chuckled, his easygoing demeanor brushing off my concerns, reassuring me that it would just be another day in our surprisingly dysfunctional paradise. Karen seemed to grow bolder with every flip of my spatula, edging towards my yard like a dramatic villain in a soap opera. "Is that the smoke I smell flooding my pristine airspace?" she bellowed, her piercing blue eyes narrowing to slits. "I certainly hope you have a permit for that BBQ." Never missing a beat, I grinned, deciding to embrace the chaos. "Oh, Karen, the only permit I need is the one for good times," I replied, holding up a buttery corn on the cob like a trophy. "But rest assured, I'll pass all future grilling opportunities by you first." Her face went from puce to a shade of beetroot, and for a heart-stopping moment, I imagined she might combust with frustration. It turned out, however, that my bread roll-level sass would only fuel the inferno. It wasn't long before the cosmic scales of comedy tipped, and Karen decided to call for backup. Her move was unexpected but slightly predictable, considering the tension. As I assembled the toppings and coordinated witty commentary with Mike on the side, the siren shrieked in the distance. Joy! My BBQ was now an impromptu police event theater. As the officers arrived, I felt both apprehensive and daringly triumphant. Maybe I would serve them a plate of hot dogs as a peace offering. After all, nothing says everything's fine, quite like a well-cooked frankfurter. But then it hit me. What if they sided with Karen? My heart raced like the flames dancing in my grill, and I instantly suspected I'd be publicly sentenced to a lifetime of veggie burgers and no ketchup policies. The officers approached on foot, while Karen, embodying the wrath of a mini-god, launched into her grievance speech about the ether of my barbecue smoke enveloping her immaculate roses. The lead officer, a robust man with a mustache that could rival any charred meat surface, listened intently. I could barely keep a straight face as he nodded in faux seriousness while I stood there clutching my apron like a superhero cape. "Ma'am, while we appreciate your concern for neighborhood health," he said slowly, "I believe this is a case of neighborly expression." I swallowed hard. Could the tide really be turning? And would I be rescued by an officer of the law right when I thought I'd need them in pink cuffs? But just as I thought I could let out a joyful cackle of victory, the situation took a turn for the utterly absurd. Karen, perhaps sensing her grip around the situation begin to unravel, reached into her pocket and brandished her smartphone like a weapon. "I have video evidence of illegal smoke pollution," she chimed in with that over-dramatic flair reserved for daytime soap opera stars. The poor officer exchanged bewildered glances with his partner, before eventually asking if he could see this astonishing documentary Karen had taken. Her smirk was almost palpable, and for a fleeting second, I pictured popcorn on my counter as the neighborhood crowds gathered for the weekend premiere. As Karen confidently played her evidence, the officers looked increasingly horrified, not by the smoke, but by the clear violations of personal privacy she had committed while filming her clandestine surveillance. "Ma'am," one of the officers spoke up, shaking his head. "You realize filming your neighbors without their consent might be a violation of privacy laws, right?" I stood there, heart racing at the plot twist like a child at a magic show, watching the facade of Karen's ever-pristine authority dissolve. As the realization began to dawn upon her, I suppressed a wave of triumphant glee. Speaking of cosmic karma, "Oh, would you look at that?" I quipped, failing to hide my smirk. "Seems like the real hot air is coming from over there." A round of chuckles spread beyond the roses surrounding Karen, and I couldn't help but bask in the aesthetic of shades of irony. As she noticeably deflated, the officers returned to their patrol vehicle, but not before issuing Karen a citation for her questionable methods. The day ended with laughter ringing through the air, and the sound of sizzling delicacies igniting enthusiasm amid friendship. And as the sun began to set on our little suburban saga, I felt a profound sense of togetherness, relief, and yes, a dash of petty satisfaction. Would I continue to live under the shadow of Karen's invasive scrutiny, or had I finally sent a message about the absurdity of entitlement? Only time would tell, but in that moment, standing proudly beside my BBQ and around my friends, I felt like a hero championing the spirit of innocent summer rebellion. As the officers waved goodbye, Karen stood in her yard, a tableau of disbelief marinated in outrage. She twitched like a cartoon character turned to stone, no doubt processing the lapses in her grand plan to topple my BBQ empire. I glanced at Mike, who, sensing the winds of victory blowing my way, couldn't suppress his laughter any longer. "Do you think she'll stew over this for a week or just until her next neighborhood watch meeting?" he joked, feigning a solemn nod. I wondered if Karen would spend her evenings not with the TV, but combing through the HOA guidelines like a detective, redrafting the case of the scandalous smoke. I could envision her crafting a PowerPoint presentation of what Jamie did, with bullet points that included a dramatic reenactment of her surveillance escapade. The absurdity made me chuckle as I removed the last of the sizzling burgers from the grill, the smell wafting into the sunset like a triumphant flag waving above my backyard victory. Just as I began condensing my grilling tools back into order, I realized that the victory couldn't be enjoyed in isolation. The entire neighborhood buzzed with the kind of fervor only a good BBQ and a Karen taming showdown could inspire. I could see the lights flicker on in houses as neighbors peeked out like inquisitive meerkats, eyes wide with curiosity regarding the unfolding saga. Mike, ever the good-natured troublemaker, took the opportunity to call out to the onlookers with a grin. "Come on over. We have enough ribs for the whole HOA. Just don't forget your personal space cameras, all right?" As laughter echoed in the curly twilight, I couldn't help but feel the joyful camaraderie that had blossomed in the aftermath of the chaos. The scent of grilled goods and unexpected triumph hung in the air like a victory anthem. However, beneath the flurry of amusement lay a curious gasp. Did she really film her neighbors? Floated from one daring voice to another. I couldn't help but roll my eyes, realizing that this incident would only add fuel to the gossip bonfire that chugs below the surface of our neighborhood's expanse. I could almost hear the whispers gathering speed, each passerby throwing in their 2 cents. "Did you see Jamie's BBQ? Apparently Karen got into a kerfuffle over smoke." The idea that I was being hailed as some kind of neighborhood Robin Hood filled me with a strange mix of pride and trepidation. Would I become the unwitting hero, or was I merely setting the stage for an even fiercer retaliation from Karen as she plotted her next move under the hood of a new blazer and an even meaner scowl? Determined not to dwell on Karen's potential wrath, I rounded up the gang, serving burgers while encouraging everyone to partake in some backyard shenanigans. The grill filled the air with a smoky, mouth-watering embrace, and soon the cheerful noise of sizzling and laughter became a symphony of delightful rebellion against the uneventful suburban drudgery. The invasion of pleasure was tangible as I caught snippets of Mike regaling the crowd about how he once found a raccoon trying to steal his carefully arranged trash bags. Not quite as diabolical as Karen's antics, but just as entertaining. I swear, People were leaning in closer, eyes sparkling with excitement as they sampled from my platter, liberated by the sheer bliss of grilled meat and camaraderie, backed by that intoxicating flavor of ironic justice hanging in the air like sonic fireworks. But then, out of nowhere, an ominous rustle broke through the laughter, freezing the momentum. I turned slowly, a mock dread flooding my mind, expecting to find the ghost of HOA past lurking in the shadows. Instead, there she was, Karen, stepping out gingerly from behind her beloved roses, glaring down her sharp nose like a general summoning her last vestige of authority. "You think this is over?" She spat through gritted teeth, and for a brief moment, silence enveloped us like an uninvited blanket. The laughter quickly died down, as though the universe weaved a dramatic, suspenseful pause, holding its collective breath for the climactic clash. The comedy of it all felt almost surreal as I reached a boiling point of defiance. "Oh, Karen, sweetheart, is that a threat I hear? Because honestly, it sounds more like a challenge." I shot back, my voice dripping with playful menace. "I'd love for you to join us. We have plenty." I gestured toward the grill, the vivid colors of summer fading away as the light dimmed with the encroaching night. Karen frowned, her face morphing from judgment into unfiltered fury. The atmosphere pulsated thickly, with every heart speeding, mine thrumming with the thrill of impending confrontation and the chance for another glorious singer. Would the universe grant me another moment of deep-seated victory, or were we about to spiral into an epic showdown of BBQ proportions? "Just remember, I am the president of the HOA," she attempted, a last-ditch effort to reclaim her superiority. As I opened my mouth to deliver my brilliantly crafted retort, I caught a glimpse of Mike winking, signaling something behind Karen. I hesitated mid-sentence and turned, spotting a wave of my loving neighbors morphing into a herd of laughter, their phones raised in solidarity. "Look, we're all filming now, Karen. How does it feel to be under surveillance?" I hollered, leading to a further eruption of hilarity from the crowd. "What's the matter? No permits for this?" The air around us crackled with the thrill of neighborhood unity, stakes raised higher than the flames on my BBQ just moments ago. The triumphant laughter that erupted was electric, one that echoed through our shared suburban sprawl, embedding itself in our hearts and cementing an unbreakable bond. I wondered how deep the roots of our camaraderie could grow from this moment, perhaps even forging a community that could withstand the shadows of petty tyrants like Karen. As our little collective stood against the backdrop of my suddenly infamous BBQ, there was an unspoken understanding between us that we had turned a small-scale rebellion into something worth celebrating. So what would it be? Would we continue to revel in our newfound strength? Or was this only the beginning of the war against oppression? With uncertain excitement and an attitude as fiery as my grill, I couldn't wait to find out. The air was charged with tension as Karen stood there, her ominous presence clashing with the warm glow of community that radiated from the BBQ. I felt my heart beating in rhythm with the laughter around me, the sweet smell of charred meat somehow amplifying the absurdity of the situation. "You think this is over?" she had hissed, as if the mere mention of her HOA title would send us scrambling. But dear Karen, in our tightly knit neighborhood, your tyranny had just met its match, grilled to perfection by camaraderie marinated in barbecue sauce. My mind wandered momentarily to the delicious ribs sizzling beside me, wondering if tonight's feast would add a touch of culinary karma to our cause. "No, Karen, it's just getting started," I called back, raising my spatula, which felt like a sword in my hand. As I savored the feeling of standing my ground, a fleeting glimmer of doubt tried to creep in. What if this confrontation ignited something larger, a far more dramatic showdown? I glanced around, and my neighbors stared wide-eyed, phones poised like flashbulb cameras, capturing every moment. It was as if we were in an episode of a reality show and Karen had unknowingly auditioned to be the villain. Each laugh felt like an electric surge, and I found strength in being the spokesperson for the misfit rebels of the HOA. My chest swelled with bravery. I wasn't merely the homeowner with a grill. I was the reluctant hero rising against an overzealous crusader of conformity. "Do you need a permit for your threats, Karen?" Someone from the crowd shouted, igniting another burst of laughter that sent the backyard buzzing. But Karen, unyielding and peeved, countered, "This is a serious violation of HOA policies." Her voice was increasingly shrill, and I could practically see the "I'm offended" badge pinned beneath her tight blouse. What she didn't realize, as I stood pleasantly close to my mouth watering BBQ, was that her tactics had become painfully laughable. Just as I began to mentally script the final act of a tragedy for her, where she ruminated over her plight in solitary confinement, clutching a gardening hoe in a dim-lit shed, Mike stepped forward, his expression a mix of mischief and camaraderie. "Hey Karen, we can definitely provide you with some healthy smoke alternatives. Have you tried grilled vegetables? No need to keep your eyes on us. We've got the veggies on lock." The crowd erupted. This silly banter was enough to send Karen teetering on the edge of fury. I could almost see the gears in her head grinding to a halt as she was trapped in the chaos of laughter and a recipe for conflict of interest laid bare. One might argue she could definitely use some humor, as the prevailing thought of her watching us from the shadows had devolved into a comedic spectacle. I couldn't help but feel the sweeping victory throbbing in my chest, akin to winning a prize at a state fair. Only this time, Karen was not going to skate away easily. She was the very embodiment of a grumpy old cat, cornered by children, her indignation hanging in the air as thick as smoke from my grill. As the laughter died down, a new sense of fierce determination gathered momentum among my neighbors. "Maybe we should all install cameras in our yards to keep tabs on you, Karen," one neighbor shouted. "See how you like it." Claps and cheers rippled through the crowd as Karen's face twisted tighter than a pretzel. In that moment, it struck me how wonderfully absurd our neighborhood drama had unfolded, turning a petty neighborhood grievance into a spontaneous revolution spiced with delicious BBQ. Would we dare adopt guerrilla tactics against the HOA regime one more time? I wondered fleetingly as I grinned at the prospect of collective mischief. We were the merry band of misfits, illuminated by the glow of my grill, no longer mere spectators subservient to the will of an HOA overlord. With adrenaline as my fuel, I strutted with my tongs, flipping burgers, as though I were conducting an orchestra. "What's the matter, Karen? Can't handle the heat?" I quipped, relishing the sighs of astonishment and giggles from my fellow neighbors. But she, however, still had her sights set on me with a look that could curdle milk. Classic Karen, it didn't matter that her surveillance tactics had been laid bare. Her resolve to restore order in the neighborhood remained steadfast. I reasoned that her delusions of grandeur might get even funnier as she misconstrued each hapless burger flip as an act of rebellion. The absurd unit of mean-spirited vengeance she had conjured was fizzling fast, and suddenly the chaos of our shenanigans felt heavier to my heart, filled with an undeniable joy. Then, as if scripted by some cosmic comedy writer, Karen suddenly screamed out, "This is exactly what I warned you all about. You people can't grill without chaos. This is why I protect our neighborhood." Who knew I'd end up accidentally spearheading a BBQ on the front lines movement? Encouraged by my neighbor's infectious laughter, I leaned in. "Chaos? Is that the term you meant to use? Or were you referring to the lifestyle you've chosen behind those cameras?" The collective laughter erupted all at once, as if orchestrated by some invisible hand, underscoring the hilarity of the entire squabble. It was then I understood. Our tiny BBQ wasn't just about food and fun. It had transformed into a social movement for solidarity against the absurdities of petty rules, petty enforcers, and the comically distorted sense of entitlement. With a gleam in my eye and a grin plastered across my face, I saw the crowd swell with glee, and I thought to myself, this moment is far too hilarious to let slip away uncelebrated. I began to unleash a slew of spits and jests, each more ridiculous than the last, turning our defiance into a roguish performance art piece. "We serve food, not fear," I bellowed, holding high my tools like a superhero wielding a spatula of hope. With that proclamation, the party swelled beyond mere grilling. Everyone leaned in, basking in the camaraderie we'd cultivated, a delicious recipe for community jamming as everyone eagerly indulged in grilled food and gathered together celebrating our absurd endeavors. As the dusk deepened, It struck me with excitement. Perhaps Karen hadn't signed just her own death warrant tonight. We could reshape what it really meant to belong in this neighborhood. Would our little BBQ-initiated uprising follow through, or would it only be the appetizer of a larger feast of rebellion yet to come? As I held my spatula overhead like a victorious gladiator, the laughter from the crowd surged, melding with the intoxicating aroma of sizzling ribs and hot dogs enveloping the yard. Karen's face, a canvas painted with disbelief and mounting rage, could have made for a postmodern art exhibit titled Entitlement Chronicles. Each look she shot our way was a mix of disdain and, "How dare you challenge me?" as though we were a bunch of artsy punks decked out in tie-dye, attempting to overthrow a disturbance-free utopia. It was both hilarious and satisfying, a spectacle begging to be immortalized on Instagram under Karen vs. BBQ. I could almost hear the clicks of the cameras, capturing the nefarious villain against the heroism of backyard grilling. But leaving the narrative of her wrath solely for public spectacle would be far too simplistic. I knew the absurdity of the evening had yet to reach its zenith. Karen's piercing blue eyes narrowed, and with every gaping gasp of exasperation, the invisible line separating them from our grill grassroots slipped further beyond her grasp. The tension crackled in the air like an electrical charge, and while the laughter roared around me, part of me could sense a storm brewing. Summoning my inner game show host, I announced, "And for our next act, the queen of HOA drama will now present her show-stopping performance of overzealous surveillance gone wrong." A chorus of mock applause erupted, and I could see her struggling to process whether to shout or burst into tears. Just then, my ever-dedicated ally Mike, ever the conspirator, decided to fuel the flames of mischief. He strolled over with that signature carefree smile, unperturbed by the chaos swirling around him. "Karen," he called out, adopting what he likely thought was a helpful tone, "how about a tutorial on how to grill for our next HOA meeting? Maybe you'll finally realize that smoke signals are not just for reporting neighborhood infractions." The crowd exploded into a cacophony of laughter, and I reveled in the moment, witnessing the embodiment of glee as it unraveled Karen's tightly wound demeanor. Honestly, the only thing missing was popcorn, and I couldn't help but wonder if Karen would even sue us for that too. Then came the moment that would forever live in neighborhood folklore. Two uniformed police officers, having finished their series of giggles over my grill master certification, which I was considering giving myself, sauntered over to Karen. A few moments before they had taken to measuring my impeccable grill work, they stood there, badges gleaming, as one officer, a wave of curly hair and sparkling grin, took out his notepad and motioned for the surveillance cameras to be presented. "You might want to drop us some details on those neighborhood protection measures of yours, Karen." The officer's serious tone only seemed to antagonize her, yet I felt an exhilarating rush sweep through me. Maybe it was the smell of char-grilled goodness or the undeniable thrill of impending karma, a fitting satirical twist for the evening. Her flustered response morphed into an overdramatic flourish of defense. "I was merely protecting neighborhood values," she cried, her hands flailing like a conductor, scheduling an emergency hymn. "Nothing can be too perfect without oversight. I'm just trying to ensure that chaos doesn't reign here." The officers exchanged glances, their expressions reflecting an understated wickedness that transcended their ranks. I could tell they were enjoying Karen's distress just as much as we were. "Ma'am, I think you might want to check into, let's say, neighborhood balance. Surveillance without permission can land you in some hot water just like those ribs," one officer added, grinning ear to ear as I fiddled with my tongs, relishing the impending justice for the underdogs in this saga. Karen's frustration surfaced like a soufflé gone sour. With a tightening grip on her clipboard, she attempted to reel back her composure. "I will combat this. None of you will obstruct the tranquility I've so diligently maintained." Our stirring juggernaut of grilling camaraderie only solidified in the face of her threats. I scanned my neighbors, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of the barbecue, a triumphant rebellion forged of resilience simmering with laughter and absurdity. The thrall of it might as well have been a neighborhood gala, food flowing in lieu of her uptight regulations. It felt like we could summon an army to join our culinary revolution in the face of Karen's indignation, and the funny thought sent another ripple of laughter through our assembly. Suddenly, one of my neighbors declared, "Let's crown our grill champion since our HOA is clearly void of humor. Jamie, you can be our grilling monarch." Cheers erupted like a confetti bomb, and I felt ridiculous gratitude wash over me as I waved my spatula with exaggerated pomp. It hit me then that we weren't just playing off the pettiness. We had ignited a movement, showcasing that entitlement doesn't stand a chance against good company, laughter, and a solid BBQ. Our celebration expanded beyond hot dogs and ribs, morphing into a triumph of community spirit. Perhaps Karen would find absurdity in her power as we continued to rise up amidst laughter and flavor. Then came the crescendo, a surreal acceptance from Karen, who realized she had become a caricature instead of the enforcer of order. With great exasperation, she huffed, "This is exactly why the regulations exist. You people and your insubordination." Shrieks of laughter filled the air, and I couldn't resist the urge any longer. Right, because a well-cooked burger must present a threat to the Constitution. What's next? No birthday parties without HOA consent? The laughter soared again, bursting through the scene like the 4th of July fireworks. And in that moment, I knew we had unearthed something profound: growth in humor, silk out of struggle, and a well-seasoned camaraderie that could withstand even the most overzealous gatekeeper. The battle of wits was won. Karma had been served on a platter. But what lay ahead for the neighborhood now that we had skewered the absurdity of our HOA? Would more rising grill titans emerge to join this eccentric brigade? As the laughter faded into a reverberating echo of disbelief and camaraderie, I made a mental note to forever cherish that moment, the unstoppable thrill of my tirade against Karen in defense of our joyful barbecue. Victory danced on the horizon like the flames of our grill as my friends leaned back in chairs, clutching their plates filled with smoky perfection. Meanwhile, the officers exchanged bemused glances with the crowd, as if they had stumbled into a reality show filled with plot twists straight out of a sitcom. "Who knew BBQs could come with a side of frontier justice?" one of them joked, an inexplicable grin plastered on his face. It felt like our backyard was the new hotspot in the neighborhood, propelled perhaps not just by the allure of good food, but by the sweet taste of rebellion against the HOA's iron grip. Amidst flirting with the idea of declaring barbecue freedom as my new cause, Karen, having feigned amusement long enough to collect herself, sputtered a final attempt at authority. "You people think this is funny?" she countered, a high-pitched waver in her voice. "I'll be taking this matter to the HOA board. They will uphold regulations, and you will see the consequences of this disaster." It was like watching a soap opera villain spiral into dramatic fury, complete with trademark hand motions and exaggerated looks. The crowd erupted in guffaws, one of my neighbors even imitating her distress, with a perfectly poor rendition of a hawk watching for prey. "Watch out, everyone! The HOA hawk has taken flight," they squealed. As much as I wanted to respond with a comeback about her powers being as fictionally potent as a superhero's, I instead took a strategic breath and allowed the moment to sink in. With the spotlight still gleaming on our now thriving soiree, it occurred to me that perhaps this wasn't merely a win against Karen. It was an awakening to ordinary people pooling their creativity and humor against the looming dread of neighborhood enforcement. Mike, observing my contemplative face, leaned in, saying, "We can't stop here, Jamie. If we've ruffled her feathers, let's capitalize on it. You know the great neighborhood BBQ war is just getting started." His grin radiated with mischief and unearned bravado, as if he were Christopher Columbus setting sail into uncharted waters. But instead of spices and riches, we were after the glorious revelations of communal backyard feasting. I couldn't help but laugh, picturing our backyard as a bustling saloon from the Old West, antagonizing the local sheriff solely with grilled cheese sandwiches. And so a plan began to sprout amongst the embers. As we tossed around ideas between mouthfuls of ribs, the discussion shifted from merely basking in the glow of our rebellion to orchestrating our devastating barbecue strategy against the HOA, led by a self-proclaimed grill coalition. It was only fitting, after all, that our new cause would gather around the crackling warmth of yesterday's victory. Let's put on the most epic HOA protest BBQ, I declared with gutsy fervor. Not only will we invite the entire neighborhood, but we'll theme it. Every dish will represent our refusal to be silenced. I could hear the cogs of collaboration turning as neighbors banded together, plotting the biggest barbecue showdown this suburb had ever seen. Days turned into a whirlwind of preparations, our momentum building like smoke escaping the grill. Flyers fragrant with the promise of mouth-watering entrees decorated every mailbox, each declaring an HOA-free barbecue, emblazoned with joyous graphics of dancing burgers and hot dogs. Excitement soared as we spread the word of our sizzling rebellion, transforming Karen's name into nothing more than a punchline among my fellow grillers. Each evening felt akin to the night before a coveted holiday. Everyone whispered of secret recipes and wagered on who could create the wildest meat creations. It was a carnival of culinary delights linked by a shared dream to turn Karen's vendetta against us into a celebration of community joy, igniting revolutionary fire through grill marks and marinades. Everyday chatter swirled with rumors of the HOA board's impending meeting, about our uprising, transforming Karen into a legend within our walls, a whimsical villain who merely shoved us together as our mouths watered in anticipation of the spontaneous fight against her suffocating grip. The grand barbecue day finally arrived, marking the fusion of laughter, mixology, and the crackle of grilling perfection, all intertwined with banter and speculative drama. The smell wafted through the air like an anthem of defiance, each whiff signifying our audacity in the face of ludicrous rules. As I donned my Grill Queen apron, a bold declaration woven across the front, I grinned when the sight of neighbors gathered in my yard appeared to rival the majesty of a summer festival. Little did we know that our celebration would also draw the attention of the local media. By the time I heard Mike yell, "Over here! Who's ready for yummy justice?" to a fellow neighbor while recording on Instagram Live, I realized the barbecue wasn't just our rebellion. It was a movement, a defining stand against self-righteous surveillance. The noise and excitement escalated, transforming from simple cooking and laughter to a gathering of our tiny nation against the suffocation of decorum. As my neighbors flipped burgers, shared side dishes, and iced down drinks amidst a romping, jubilant crowd, I felt revived, basking in the glow of each friendly face, when an unexpected thought struck me. Could we really carve a place in this walled-off community? Would the laughter prevail, or would Karen find a way to dampen our joyous flames once again? As the sun began to dip below the horizon, and our barbecue extravaganza ignited into full swing, the air filled with the aroma of grilled meats, smoky char, and colorful laughter danced around like a summer breeze. Neighbors shuffled about with platefuls of glistening ribs, marinated vegetables skewered with care, and for the pièce de résistance, my homemade speak softly and carry a big steak BBQ sauce. It felt like we were hosting a culinary carnival that somehow zapped away all the oppressive shackles of Homeowner Association Rule 473, no BBQs after 7 p.m., or whatever arbitrary prohibition Karen had thrown at us. Take that, Karen, I thought, exhilaratingly flipping burgers with zest. My friends rallied around, lifting their drinks in a toast to laughter and rebellion, while I couldn't resist spinning elaborate tales of bravery to anyone who dared to ask about our grill coalition. Then, as if scripted in a comedy sketch, the doorbell rang. A sharp, persistent sound that cut through our joyous ruckus. Mike, quick to respond, swung the door open to reveal none other than Karen herself, her hawkish gaze set to kill mode even amidst the vibrant chaos of our gathering. Dressed in her high-waisted slacks and a blouse with a pattern far too busy for this kind of cultural affair, she stood there, arms crossed, a storm cloud of disapproval hovering ominously above her head. "This is a violation of community decorum. I was going to report this," she sputtered, before the sights before her turned her thunderous frown into a gaping, bewildered stare. Anthony from 2 doors down had just triumphantly declared, "And now, folks, I present the world's largest meatball sub," as he struggled to keep a 6-foot submarine sandwich from toppling over like a culinary leaning tower of Pisa. The laughter spiraled uncontrollably, and I could practically hear the collective "oh no, she didn't" echoing around the yard. Karen's face contorted between disbelief and the overwhelming urge for dominance, and for a second, I felt a pang of sympathy. Perhaps the joyfulness displayed before her was akin to witnessing a flash mob in the middle of a symphony. "You people think this is funny?" she repeated, her voice faltering in pitch. "I'll have you know I'm writing a complaint to the HOA board this very second." But this time, the threat lacked its usual bite. Instead, it only added fuel to our spectacle. A neighbor shot a glance at the sky and quipped, "Quick! Someone catch the light breeze before it carries Karen's HOA complaint away." Music to my ears. The absurdity was palpable, and suddenly it felt like we were not just united in revelry, but also in a comical crusade against Karen's reign of terror over our culinary freedom. But then, plot twist, the hypnotic flavors wafting from our grill had caught the attention of more than just our immediate neighbors. As evening progressed, a local news van rumbled down the street, cameras poised and ready, creating a scene worthy of a sitcom finale. I watched in awe, nearly dropping a strand of pulled pork as the news anchor stepped out, microphone in hand, with an erudite smile. "Good evening, viewers. I'm here to report live on a story centered around the miraculous resistance of rogue barbecue activists and the endless quest for grilled deliciousness." My heart raced as I realized that not only had we made a stand against Karen, but this whimsical event was now propelling into community lore, possibly even becoming a hallmark of suburban rebellion. Oh, how I delighted at the thought of Karen finding her grievances splashed across the evening news. The sun dipped lower, punctuating the atmosphere with an electric golden warmth as the night unfolded around our barbecue paradise. There was laughter, there was dancing, and to my real shock, even live music. It appeared that one adventurous neighbor had brought out the ukulele, strumming tunes that blended eerily well with the sizzling sounds from the grill. A game of kitchen karaoke was unfolding, complete with enthusiastic renditions of classic hits that seemed to mock the spirit of decorum itself. "This backyard is taking the form of a cultural eruption." Someone yelled, "Why bother with HOA rules when we can celebrate freedom instead?" The night had transformed from a petty revolt against Karen into a delightful gathering of hearts, laughter, and heartily fulfilled cravings. Yet as the festivities reached a euphoric crescendo, it couldn't escape my mind that lurking beneath all the layered charcoal and camaraderie, our grand gathering was still under scrutiny. The clamor of our sizzling rebellion echoed beyond the confines of the yard. Karen, arms still crossed, was caught between her vigilant watch and the sheer joy unfolding. Glancing at her, I noticed a shimmer of recognition in her eyes. Perhaps this could be a moment for the two of us. Or at least a moment for her to reconsider her hawk role. I scoffed at the thought but couldn't help feeling victorious. We had taken her power and transformed it into joy that bubbled with smoky flavors and laughter. I stood atop an improvised wooden crate, raising a glass towards Karen. "What do you say, Karen? Want to join the BBQ revolution?" As the sun finally disappeared behind the grassy horizon and fireflies began their show, I heard a timid murmur from Karen. "Well, maybe I could try a rib," she managed to mutter, her protective exterior slightly thawing under the warmth of our gathering. The crowd of celebrators erupted into open cheers while I turned back to my grill, triumphant in every fiery sense. Who knew that a BBQ, once feared as a battlefield of HOA strife, could evolve into a platform for compassion, hilarity, and a chance for a new beginning? Maybe this wild ride of communal spirit would steer a fresh paradigm shift. If we could break the chains of formality, who knew what communal feasts lay in our future? An unexpected glimmer of hope flickered in the air, reminding me that sometimes even the unlikeliest alliances could transform neighborly pride, one barbecue at a time.